For 2 weeks straight, well, it's actually a lot more than 2 weeks, but for the sake of continuity with the series, for 2 weeks straight, I only played really old games. No battle passes, no microtransactions, no live service, no online gameplay, just a little bit of good old-fashioned gaming. Again, there are 3 games to be exact: Earthbound for the SNES, Man X for the SNES, and one game that I genuinely had never even heard of until you guys recommended it, and one that hit me in a special place that I really didn't expect: Cristales for the NES. Every video that I make in this series, I raise my expectation bar just a little bit higher, yet you guys consistently give me games that somehow manage to destroy them. Welcome back to the Regress series, where I play old games, half of which I've never even heard of, just to see how much gaming has changed for the better, or to be honest, mostly for the worse. Speaking of my last videos, if you haven't seen any of those yet, feel free to watch those first to catch up on all of the lore and then come back here, or just stay here and watch me continue to prove to you that your favorite games are indeed not just good for the sake of nostalgia. Hey there, all you beautiful guardians of the glaze. Welcome back to the Milky Donut. If you're new here, this is the Milky Donut. We do all things video games, movies, and pop culture. And if you're not new here, man, did you get taller? You look taller than the last time I saw you, you stud. Well, before we jump into yet another retro gaming time travel experiment, as always, I should mention that I do have a goal of reaching 10,000 subscribers as quickly as I can, which has been going great, by the way, so thank you very much. If you could go ahead and leave a like, leave the glaziest of comments, hype it if you can, and subscribe if you think the video is worthy of the algorithm. As always, shout out to the subscriber of the week, Mr. Uncle Bob Boomer Games, and make sure you stick around to the end for the reveal of the brand new subscriber of the week, because it could very well be you. And with all that nonsense out of the way, let's jump back into our video game time machine and play some really old games to see how much we've gained, or maybe how much we've lost in the world of video games. Now, usually at this point in the video, I would explain the rules for my little experiment, but for the sake of time, if you don't know them, I've basically just been playing old games for the past couple of months straight, and I'm a changed man because of it. I'm not even really shocked anymore when these games have great gameplay, mechanics, atmospheres, or stories. At this point, I almost expect it. But what I can't seem to predict is just how good they can actually get. And that leads us into the first game we're going to be talking about, Earthbound for the SNES. Another super thanks request from Mr. Nesquick, along with a whole bunch of you glazy little guardians. And man, I really don't know if I've ever experienced a game quite like this one. I'm going to give you one of my first reactions to this game, and it went something like this. Wait, this is what Ness is from? This is what Ness is from. Really? Yet another character that I only knew from Brawl, and honestly, I thought he was just an exclusive character for that game. Please feel more than free to roast me, because it's worth what was the legendary realization. It's crazy, because sometimes I feel like I'm a big video game fan, and then things like this happen, and I'm like, I don't know anything. What? Don't ask me how I didn't know this. I had never even heard of Earthbound, so there's that. Earthbound almost feels like somebody took every, what I guess you could say is normal RPG idea imaginable, and deliberately replaced it with the strangest possible alternative. And you know what? I love it for that. Instead of dragons or princesses or fantastical medieval kingdoms, you're dealing with, and let me not miss anything here, zombies, alien invaders, corrupt politicians, possessed taxi cabs, cults that want to paint things blue. Yeah, that's real. Magic butterflies, giant piles of vomit, and somehow all of it still feels, emotionally grounded. Yeah, tell me how that one makes any sense. How am I at one point helping a town survive a zombie outbreak, and then 2 minutes later I'm talking to a tiny weird little species called Mr. Saturn, while a magic chill-out butterfly is flying into my body, restoring my psychic powers? How am I a lot of things here? The Mr. Saturns reside in a village named Saturn Valley, that of which you travel through in order to reach Milky Well. Wait a minute, Milky Well? How nice of them to name a sanctuary after your boy Milky. Is this why you guys recommended that I play this game? I shall now pack my bags and move there. Thank you, Guardians. Anyways, Earthbound constantly feels like it was inspired by a childhood NyQuil fever dream. And the best part is that it's not at all afraid or ashamed of its identity. It shows you some weirdness and then doubles down, fully committing to the insanity. And you know what? I respect that. The plot basically revolves around Ness and his friends trying to stop Gygus, or as I like to say, Gygus. Although despite sounding like a Godzilla villain, Gygus is known as both the embodiment of evil and the universal cosmic destroyer. He's an evil alien who, upon failing his original mission to reclaim the knowledge of psychokinesis from humans, fully intends to sentence all reality to the horror of infinite darkness. Yep, sounds like a real party pooper. Unless you're that one Luma from the Super Mario movie, then this probably sounds like a great time. Your journey begins because a tiny bug named Buzz who crashes down from the sky inside of a meteorite tries to warn you about the future. Thank you, Buzz, you're a real one. thus beginning your hero's journey to save the world. It sounds completely ridiculous when I say it out loud, and well, it's because it is, but somehow it works perfectly. I think one big reason why it works so well is because the game never takes itself too seriously for too long. Some of the humor in Earthbound I found to be genuinely fantastic. And I'm gonna walk a fine line here because I don't want to do the game a disservice by calling it a comedy or overly funny, because it never makes fun of itself to the point where it feels like a spoof or overly self-deprecating. But there are definitely some really funny points. Hardly anybody reacts normally to anything that's happening around them. NPCs constantly say bizarre things, random conversations become hilarious out of nowhere, and the world feels intentionally awkward in a way that somehow makes it feel more human. Similar to the instance I mentioned earlier, one minute you're fighting hippies and the next you're helping the Runaway Five get out of debt, or you're dealing with a cult that's obsessed with painting everything blue. You know what? Blue is pretty great, I get it. And yet, despite how goofy everything is, and I don't even know if goofy is the right word, despite how bizarre everything is, there's an emotional sincerity to it that's ever so gracefully woven throughout all of it. Ness calling home because he gets homesick, which actually functions as a mechanic. His mom worried that he's gonna go outside and save the world in his pajamas. Your dad actually functioning as the save system. These little details are extremely clever because at first glance they just look like random nonsensical elements, but upon closer inspection, they give the game an oddly personal, comforting feeling that I definitely was not expecting. To be honest, I have no idea what I was expecting, but it definitely wasn't anything I got. And I'm not mad about it. One of the characters that stood out to me was Porky. At first, he just feels like an annoying neighborhood kid that's constantly making your life worse, which he is, but the further the game goes on, the more he transforms into a genuinely manipulative, antagonistic little slime ball. He feels less like a traditional RPG villain and more like a former friend that you had growing up that slowly became a complete menace to society. And after playing the game, I kept wondering why Porky was the way he was. So I did some digging and I stumbled across a couple Reddit theories that I thought were interesting. One Reddit user suggested something along the lines of basically saying that Porky didn't fully become the manipulative little menace he turns into until after getting involved with the Happy cults and the Mani Mani statue. And because the statue amplifies the worst parts of people, they theorized that it basically fed into Porky's jealousy and insecurities until it completely consumed him. And even after Ness destroys the statue later on, the damage to Porky's mind was already done, which is why he becomes so obsessed with following Gygus afterwards. They also brought up another detail from the Japanese version where Porky apparently tries apologizing after the cult falls apart, but because Ness is a silent protagonist, Porky misinterprets the lack of response as rejection, and because he was already jealous of Ness to begin with, that rejection just pushes him even further over the edge. Honestly, whether that was the developer's intentions or not, it genuinely makes Porky feel way more tragic and interesting than just an annoying neighborhood bully that turns evil. My point is that Earthbound consists of layers that you can peel back and dive deeper into. And this is a Milky Donut video after all, so of course I have to talk about the atmosphere because that is a staple here at the MD. I constantly talk about atmosphere in these videos, but Earthbound's atmosphere is completely different from games like Super Metroid or Donkey Kong Country or Castlevania. Instead of loneliness, gothic horror, or the feeling of being thrown into an eerie environment, Earthbound gives you a strange suburban dreamlike feeling. Walking through small towns at night, listening to the music, staying in little hotels, and talking to all the random NPCs, the world feels strangely alive, and the soundtrack absolutely contributes to that feeling. Some songs give off that reoccurring cozy feeling, some are unsettling, some sound oddly ahead of their time, and some sound like they shouldn't even work together at all. Yet somehow everything in this game does. Again, the dialogue is genuinely funny. Not funny for an old game or funny because it's stupid, but actually funny and ahead of its time in my opinion. The game constantly pokes fun at RPG tropes, American culture, and even itself without ever feeling cynical or self-deprecating, which is something that I really found myself to enjoy and I really didn't expect. Now, we do have to talk about the combat because you guys know me so well, and you know that I don't like turn-based combat. And to be fair, I haven't given it the chance it deserves, and you guys have educated me on the fact that there's different types of turn-based combat. For example, Chrono Trigger has it, but I loved that game. I'll be honest, the combat, at least in my opinion, wasn't quite as good as it could have been, and it's definitely not due to just being an older game because Chrono Trigger came out just 1 year later and felt amazing to me, but going into it with an open mind allowed me to enjoy it a lot more than I expected to. And turn-based combat is ever so slightly growing on me, so maybe you guys should give me some suggestions of TBC games that I can play that I might enjoy. And maybe you'll even change my mind on the entire thing and show me that I'm just being shallow. The rolling HP system, however, was an especially cool mechanic. Instead of taking damage instantly, your Earthbound uses a rolling HP system where your health rapidly counts down after being hit, thus giving you a brief window to react before your HP reaches 0, allowing you to heal or finish off an enemy just in the nick of time. The mechanic makes the combat feel far more engaging in a way that very much improved the experience for me. Before Before your party fully comes together, random enemies can absolutely destroy you if you're not careful. There were points where I was genuinely terrified of certain enemies because I knew they could slime me instantly if I wasn't paying attention. And as per usual, visually, I think the game aged beautifully. The bright bubbly colors and weird enemy designs, distorted battle backgrounds, the entire thing feels surreal, but in the best possible way. Similar to how Secret of Mana felt less like an RPG and more like a childhood memory, Earthbound feels less like an RPG and more like a strange, unforgettable fever dream adventure that you had as a kid. Although I have yet to 100% this game, Earthbound captured my attention in way more ways than I thought it would, and I had a really good time playing through it. I do plan on 100%ing it, and I will probably give an update once I do so. But once I woke up from my strange dream, I jumped into a game that immediately reminded me of why older styles of gameplay can feel so unbelievably addictive. Mega Man X for the SNES. Ladies and gentlemen, this game is good. Very good. So good, I'd actually say it is great. Although Earthbound is also a great game in my opinion, Mega Man X is great for a completely different reason. You guys were practically yelling at me to play Mega Man, and yeah, I understand. You guys were correct. Again, Mega Man X for the Super Nintendo is widely considered to be one of the greatest action platformers ever made, and after playing it, it's not at all difficult to understand why. You know how we've talked about the responsiveness of some of these classic games? Well, this is a masterclass when it comes to responsive gameplay. Not only that, but the level design, the soundtrack, the pacing, and overall sense of flow are all reasons why it still holds up so well decades later. It is incredibly satisfying to play. One of the biggest reasons why I enjoyed Mega Man X so much is because of how responsive the controls feel. Every action in Mega Man X happens immediately, like pre-immediately. It almost like guesses what you're gonna do and does it preemptively. Jumping, shooting, wall climbing, and dashing all feel precise and fluid in a way that many modern games still seem to struggle to replicate. Figuring out the dash ability was the moment when the game really clicked for me. Or something clicked, I don't know, it might have been my seatbelt because fasten your seatbelts, buddy, you're in for a f***ing ride. Once you unlock the dash boots, movement becomes incredibly addictive, allowing you to fly through levels with speed and momentum. The game is also pretty freaking hard, I'm not gonna lie, I struggled pretty a lot in this game. But the difficulty mainly stems from the bosses and memorizing attack patterns. There is a ton of trial and error at play here, but it's not the type of difficulty that feels unfair because the controls are so snappy it balances out very well once you figure out how to effectively use them. Kinda like in my last video with Donkey Kong Country, except with a nice shot of espresso. Mega Man X focuses almost entirely on responsiveness and gameplay because it knows exactly what you're here for. It's the perfect example of a game that understands that movement and the act of playing the game should be what feels fun, not just progressing or winning. The opening level, which many players, game designers, and now myself, is considered to be one of the greatest tutorial stages ever created. Now, atmospheres aren't the only thing Milky's a sucker for, another one is a great tutorial section. I cannot express how much I despise slow on the nose tutorials. And if you go way back on my channel, that was one thing that I said about Helldivers 2. It had a great tutorial section, and although it's more of a traditional type of tutorial, the campy humor and sheer unseriousness of it is what made it work for me. While the tutorial section here is nothing short of exceptional. The highway stage teaches you nearly every important mechanic naturally through gameplay rather than lengthy text explanations or interruptions. For example, a bridge collapses and the only way out is by running up the wall, introducing that mechanic. And by the end of the level, you understand the combat, the platforming, enemy behaviors, environmental hazards, and movement without the game ever stopping to over-explain itself. This style of teaching through design is something I really think we need to bring back. I understand some games are a lot more complex with steeper learning curves that require more explanation, but I mean, can we just get a little more of this, like a tiny bit? Pretty please? The soundtrack is another major reason why Mega Man X feels so iconic. The music gives the game an energetic and futuristic feel that perfectly matches its fast-paced gameplay. And it wouldn't be an SNES game if the progression didn't feel rewarding. Mega Man X isn't your usual strictly linear platformer. You can challenge the Maverick bosses in different orders, and defeating certain bosses can alter other stages in noticeable ways. There are hidden armor upgrades, heart tanks, and sub-tanks, all of which permanently improve your abilities and survivability, rewarding you if you decide to tackle the game a bit differently. These upgrades aren't just small stat boosts either, many of them significantly change the way the game feels to play, thus giving Mega Man X a strong sense of progression while also encouraging replayability. Now, I've never played the original Mega Man or any other Mega Man game for that matter, but X apparently pretty much reinvented the original Mega Man formula without completely abandoning what made it fun in the first place. But please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, because like I said, I've never played the originals. During my research, I discovered that the classic NES Mega Man games were already known for tight controls and challenging gameplay, gameplay, but Mega Man X expanded on that foundation with even faster movement, wall jumps, armor upgrades, more fluid combat, and a darker futuristic atmosphere. Characters like Zero and Sigma also give the series a stronger identity and helped establish the more serious tone that made Mega Man X stand out during the 90s. Ultimately, Mega Man X blew me away in just about every way that it could have. Whether it was the tight controls, the high energy music, the rewarding exploration, excellent pacing, or extremely refined movement, the game does not rely on nostalgia to remain relevant. Again, I've never played any of these games before now. Instead, it succeeds because its design philosophy continues to feel refreshing. In many ways, Mega Man X serves as a reminder that responsive gameplay and strong level design are often more important than realism or cinematic presentation. That is why so many players still consider it to be one of the greatest games ever made. And with that, we arrive at our last stop on our time travel journey, and that stop is none other than the mythical Cristales for the NES. And I say mythical because I'm not sure how known or popular this game is or was, but only a couple of you guys recommended it. Usually I pick the games that get the most requests, but this one didn't. I think I saw maybe 3 of you recommend it to me. Well, if you're one of those few, salute to you, because I now have a huge soft spot for Cristales that I didn't really see coming. Like I said, I had never heard of this game before now, and I only saw it a few times in the comment section of my last video. And now I'm sitting here wondering why this game isn't discussed way more often. Now, although we are jumping back a generation for this last one, we are by no means regressing when it comes to any aspect of the game, because this hidden gem is insanely ambitious for an NES game. Now, some of you know that The Legend of Zelda is my favorite series of all time. Ocarina of Time is my favorite game of all time by a mile, although I can see Super Metroid smiling at me in the distance. And although I am quite literally a Zelda fanatic, I have yet to play Zelda 1 or 2, I know, so I won't be able to compare this to those, but I was still able to feel massive Zelda vibes from this game. So be aware that I am talking about Cristales as somebody who is biased to this genre. Well, this game is one of those games that immediately surprises you with just how ambitious it feels for an NES title. Released in 1990, the game combines science fiction, fantasy, exploration, and RPG mechanics into something that really does feel far ahead of its time. The story takes place in the far, far distant future year of 1997. Yeah, after a devastating war has destroyed civilization and mutated creatures all across the planet into terrifying monsters, humanity survives only by abandoning advanced technology and constructing a massive floating tower meant to somehow seal away evil forever. I don't know, maybe it'll fall and destroy the planet, who cares? The game then jumps ahead 100 years where the main character awakens from cryogenic sleep with no real understanding of who he is or what happened to the world. I swear I've heard that exact thing before, and it's probably just a dream. What makes Cristales especially interesting is the way the story unfolds. Instead of relying on constant exposition, the game gradually feeds you information through exploration and NPC dialogue. You slowly learn about the conflict between the Dragonian Empire and the people trying to stop them, along with the mystery surrounding the floating tower and the legendary 4 swords of four elemental swords needed to forge the ultimate weapon, the Master Sword, Cristales. I'm sorry, the legendary blade, Cristales. And because you, the player, start out just as confused as the protagonist, there's a constant sense of mystery pushing the adventure forward. You naturally want to keep exploring, meeting new characters, and uncovering more information about the world, which makes the progression and exploration feel exciting and worth it even decades later. Although admittedly Cristales initially appears to be very similar to something that would come from the Legend of Zelda series, it is truly more of an action RPG than a traditional action-adventure game. Alongside sword combat, which includes being able to charge the elemental swords for stronger attacks, adding another layer to combat, the game features XP, leveling systems, elemental magic, equipment upgrades, NPCs, healing abilities, towns, monsters, shops, and more. For an NES game, the amount of RPG mechanics included is genuinely impressive. But of course, there are moments where Cristales definitely reminds you that it is an NES RPG, and I'm definitely not the only one with these thoughts. Many reviews and retrospectives that I've read or watched have the same exact complaints. A lot of its issues become more noticeable the longer you play. One of the biggest annoyances is how often the game forces you to pause and cycle through menus just to switch between elemental swords. And because different enemies and obstacles require specific elements, you end up constantly interrupting the flow of gameplay to swap equipment around, which can become pretty tedious over time. The combat can also feel a little bit inconsistent, which is something that I've noticed with a couple of older RPGs, although I haven't played nearly enough to even make that a thing, and it really just comes down to the hit detection or lack thereof it at times. adding unnecessary difficulty to a game that's already very difficult. There were definitely moments where enemies clipped me from distances that I didn't think were possible, while my own attacks occasionally seemed to pass straight through enemies without registering, similar to Secret of Mana actually, but my complaints pale in comparison to the positives, and half of the issues I have really just come down to hardware limitations rather than design flaws. And for an NES title, Cristales feels surprisingly open and, of course, atmospheric. It allows you to revisit places you've already been to later in the game, and it takes place in one of my favorite settings, a post-apocalyptic fantasy setting where civilization has collapsed after some massive war happened in the distant past, and humanity rebuilt itself into a blend of fantasy and science fiction, which just so happens to be two of my favorite genres. The music has this eerie, lonely quality to it at times, especially while traveling through towns and wilderness areas, and it's all pretty effective for 8-bit music, and similar to a lot of older games, there's very, very little handholding. Now, as much as I hate excessive handholding, I wouldn't have minded a couple of more clues that led you in the right direction. That's what the internet is for. But that being said, talking to NPCs genuinely matters because they often tell you where to go or hint at hidden information. There were plenty of points where I got lost, confused, or had absolutely zero idea of what the game expected me to do next. But at the same time, the struggle and mystery became part of the experience. Something I did find myself to enjoy is how seriously the game takes itself. Unlike Earthbound's absurdity or Mega Man X's pure cracked adrenaline, Cristales feels almost melancholic at times. The world feels ancient, like you're uncovering pieces of a civilization that already died long before you arrived. Again, atmosphere. Something that I like to do after these triple playthroughs is sit back and reflect on what these games truly taught me. Well, after playing all three of these games, I think the thing that stands out the most to me is how different they all are, thriving in their own identities. Earthbound proves that games can be weird, emotional, funny, and deeply human without needing realism or coming off as dumb. Mega Man X proves that gameplay responsiveness and movement can carry an entire experience if they're polished and fun enough. And Cristales proves that even on extremely limited hardware, developers were still finding ways to create massive immersive worlds filled with mystery and exploration, and I can only imagine the hours and hours those developers put into games like these. There was no AI or DLSS, advanced computer animation, or powerful systems to run them on. There weren't even that many things to look back on and take advice from. And I think that's one of the things that this series keeps on teaching me over and over again. They made the games that they wanted to make. Not the game they thought you wanted, not the game the big studio breathing down their necks wanted, but the one they had a vision for. The one that took risks and dared to be different and pushed the boundaries despite fighting an uphill battle with their limitations. It was games like these that led us to where we are today, but I can't help but feel like somewhere along the way, we strayed away. And with that, we come to the end of our little retro time traveling journey. As always, I had a great time with these games, and each one gave me something completely different from the others when it came to the experience. So thank you guys for all of your recommendations, because honestly, this series has been changing my perspective on gaming way more than I expected it to, and oddly enough, hitting me in the feels a little bit more than I expected it to as well. And honestly, I'm not even sure what that feeling is. I'm just glad I have all of you here that get it. And that reminds me, it's time to announce the brand new subscriber of the week, and that is none other than Mr. Mad Skill Production. You are the new subscriber of the week because every time I open up my analytics to see who's my most engaging subscribers, you are always in the top 3. There's actually like 5 of you that I constantly have to juggle back and forth between to figure out who I want to do first. You know who you are, you're right there, your time is coming. But do you prefer old games or new games? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more of this series, trust me, I still have a massive list of games to get through, but keep dropping your recommendations in the comments below. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, hype, and subscribe to become a guardian of the glaze, and I'll see you next time on the Milky Donut.